A young woman sees a man standing alone beside his car. He looks harmless, clean-cut, well-spoken, calm. One arm is in a sling. He smiles politely and asks for help. It's broad daylight. People are nearby. Nothing feels dangerous. So she says yes, and then she vanishes. By the time police understand what they're looking at, multiple women are already gone. No one sees the pattern at first, because the man they're searching for doesn't look like a monster. He looks like someone you'd trust. Welcome back. If you're drawn to true crime stories that leave a mark, the kind that linger long after the story ends, then you're in the right place. Because tonight's case is not just about murder. It's about deception. It's about fear. And it's about one of the most terrifying truths true crime has ever taught us. That evil does not always arrive looking evil. Sometimes it smiles first. This is a story of Ted Bundy, and how one of the most notorious killers in American history used charm, trust, and normalcy as his deadliest weapon. In the early 1970s, America was changing. College campuses were full. Young people moved more freely. Trust came easier. Hitchhiking was common. Doors were left unlocked. Strangers were less frightening than they should have been. It was a different time. And in that time, Ted Bundy learned something dangerous. He learned that fear was easier to bypass if he looked safe. He didn't need to force his way into people's lives. He only needed them to let him in. That was a horror of Ted Bundy. He didn't hunt in darkness because he didn't have to. He hunted in plain sight. Ted Bundy was not what people expected a killer to be. He was educated, charming, intelligent, soft-spoken. He studied psychology. Later, law. He volunteered in politics, worked around people, spoke confidently, carried himself with the kind of ease that made others feel comfortable around him. And that comfort became his weapon. People trusted him because he looked trustworthy. That single fact will become one of the deadliest details in modern criminal history. Most predators rely on fear. Ted Bundy relied on kindness. He would approach women in daylight, not in dark alleys, not from behind. He would smile, speak gently, and ask for help. Sometimes he wore a fake cast. Sometimes his arm was in a sling. Sometimes he carried books. Sometimes he struggled with bags near his car. The performance was simple. A harmless man, injured, polite, needing help, and for many women, helping him felt natural, safe, normal. That was a trap. He often targeted young women near college campuses, parking lots, and public places. Places filled with witnesses, places where danger should have been obvious. But Ted Bundy understood something terrifying. People are less afraid of danger when it looks familiar, and Bundy looked familiar. He looked educated. He looked clean. He looked safe. That illusion gave him access. And once he had it, victims disappeared. At first, the disappearances didn't seem connected. A missing student in one state, a young woman gone in another. No immediate pattern, no clear suspect, no obvious connection. The cases were scattered across states: Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Idaho. And by the time investigators began to see the pattern, too much time had already passed. Too many women were already gone. That was part of what made Bundy so difficult to catch. He moved constantly. He changed states, changed routines, changed masks. And in the 1970s, law enforcement agencies were far less connected than they are now. Cases stayed local. Information moved slowly. And Bundy took advantage of every gap. He understood delay. He understood confusion. And he understood how easily people overlook what they don't want to believe. Witnesses began to describe the same man. Handsome, polite, clean-cut, often introducing himself with one name: Ted. That detail chilled investigators, because the description sounded too ordinary, too normal, too forgettable, and that made him harder to fear. The women he targeted often looked similar: young, white, long dark hair, middle part. The pattern was there. But by the time it became undeniable, families were already grieving daughters who never came home. And that is where the sadness of the story begins to deepen, because behind every headline was a family waiting for a phone call that never came, a bedroom left untouched, a mother sitting awake through the night. A father replaying the last goodbye. A future erased without warning. Ted Bundy is remembered as a monster, but his victims were daughters, students, friends, young women with ordinary plans for tomorrow. And tomorrow never came. As disappearances turned into discoveries, the horror became harder to ignore. Bodies were found in remote areas, some hidden, some left exposed. Many showed signs of unimaginable violence. And what terrified investigators most was a growing realization that this was not impulsive. It was controlled, calculated, deliberate. Bundy was not simply killing. He was selecting, planning, returning. That level of control made the crimes even more disturbing. This was not chaos. This was intention. And still, he kept moving. He kept smiling. He kept blending in. That was a nightmare. The man police were trying to find could still walk into a room and seem more trustworthy than anyone else inside it. In 1975, that began to change. A police officer stopped Bundy's car. Inside were items that raised immediate concern. Handcuffs, rope, a ski mask, tools no ordinary driver should have needed. It was enough to make police look closer. And once they did, the image Bundy had carefully built began to crack. Then came one of the most important moments in the case. A young woman named Carol Durant survived. Bundy had approached her pretending to be a police officer. He convinced her to come with him. But this time, something went wrong. She fought back. She escaped. And she lived. Her survival gave investigators something they desperately needed. A witness, a voice, a woman who could say what so many others never got the chance to say. That mattered, because survival broke the illusion. Now the monster had a face. Bundy was arrested, and for a moment, it looked like the nightmare might be over. But it wasn't, because what happened next made the story even more terrifying. He escaped. Not once, twice. The first time, he jumped from a courthouse window. He was caught, then he escaped again. This time, he cut through the ceiling of his jail cell and disappeared. And suddenly, one of the most dangerous men in America was free again. That failure would cost more lives. Bundy fled to Florida, and something had changed. He was more reckless now, more violent, less controlled. The mask was slipping, and what happened next became one of the most horrifying chapters in American true crime history. In January 1978, Bundy entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What happened inside was fast, brutal, terrifying. He attacked multiple women in their sleep. 2 were murdered. 2 others survived with devastating injuries. Then he left and attacked another woman that same night. The violence was sudden, frenzied, merciless, and it sent shockwaves across the country. The careful predator was gone. What remained was something even more dangerous, a man unraveling. Weeks later, he killed again. This time, his victim was 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. A child, her disappearance and murder horrified the country. And whatever illusion still remained around Ted Bundy died there. He was no longer just a suspect, no longer just a killer. He was the face of something darker, something colder, something beyond ordinary evil. Soon after, Bundy was captured for the final time. This time he would not escape. His trial became a spectacle. Courtrooms filled. Cameras followed him. People watched with fascination. And that fascination said something unsettling about the world, too. Because even then, people were still captivated by him. Still curious. Still drawn in by the performance. Bundy smiled in court, spoke confidently, acted as his own attorney. And even on trial for murder, he tried to control the room. That may be one of the darkest lessons in this case. Some people do terrible things and still know exactly how to appear convincing. In 1979, Ted Bundy was sentenced to death. Years later, on January 24th, 1989, he was executed in Florida. And for many people, that was supposed to be the end. But stories like this do not end cleanly, because executions do not return daughters. They do not undo fear. They do not restore the lives that were stolen. And they do not erase what the case revealed. What makes Ted Bundy endure in public memory is not just violence. It is what he represented. He shattered something people desperately wanted to believe. That danger is easy to recognize. That evil looks frightening. That monsters announce themselves. Bundy proved the opposite. He proved that someone can look calm, sound intelligent, smile kindly, and still be capable of unimaginable cruelty. That truth unsettles people because it does not stay in the past. It follows us into the present, into everyday life, into ordinary moments, into every situation where instinct is asked to compete with appearance. And maybe that is why this case still lingers, not just because of what he did, but because of what he taught the world to fear. Not the obvious threat, not the stranger in darkness, but the familiar face that feels safe too quickly. The women Ted Bundy killed are often overshadowed by his name, but they should be remembered for what they were. Not victims first, people first. Young women with futures, with routines, with people who love them. Lives interrupted by one man's cruelty. That is the tragedy beneath the infamy, and that is what should never be forgotten. Ted Bundy left behind more than a trail of violence. He left behind a warning. Charm is not character. Confidence is not safety. And the most dangerous person in the room may not look dangerous at all. That is the lesson, not paranoia. Awareness, not fear of everyone, but respect for instinct. Because sometimes the first warning is not what you see. It is what you feel. And sometimes trusting that feeling is what keeps you alive.